Let me say hello formally to all of you. It's a great pleasure to have you here. And our topic today is intriguing. To some extent, clarifies many of our questions, but on the other hand, it gives us sometimes even more questions, and that's what is beautiful about it. For you who are here with me for the first time, I'd like to say that I dedicate to research about out-of-body experience because I have had my own experiences and then I engaged into studying about this topic and did some experiments, but mostly I have taught lots of classes around the world. If you want to take a look at my background on this topic, you can watch my TEDx talk. So you just look for Nanci Trivellato, how out-of-body experience could transform yourself and society. My TEDx talk I had in the title, Could Transform Yourself, Science and Society, but it was cut out. And now recently there is a note there in my TEDx talk. Oh, we don't approve of these ideas. You know why? Because in a way, if I were talking about a religion or a belief, if I say it's a matter of belief, then I can say anything. But at the moment that I am discussing something that I'd like to say, and that's what I'm stating, it's possible to study it. It should be something that we understand. Not everything that people describe as an out-of-body experience is an out-of-body experience. However, some experiences are confirmed and we've got to study this. So the little remark there, it's interesting to me because I see over there things that are much less carefully put. Anyways, the reason why I'm saying this is because I would like us to address this study here today in a way that we aim to be as objective as possible. However, this is a subjective information in a way because you have to leave your body, have your own lucid astral projection to be able to witness this sort of thing, which we are calling here consciousnesses, spirits, people who are in between lives. And I'm going to be addressing only this little bit here of those who are in a distressed condition when they are in between lives. I'm not addressing what sort of research there is to prove there is an afterlife. I'm not addressing why we think there is other lives beyond or after we have this one, we would have other physical lives. I'm not addressing this today. I have other videos here in the channel in which I discuss about these topics. And I can always discuss anything else you want. You just leave me in the comments down below what you would like me to discuss. Usually my team takes note of it and I will eventually get there. It's a pleasure for me to share the information that I know, which is limited, of course, if we are talking about study science, trying to understand the mechanism of why these things happen. The information is limited, as it is limited how much we know about neuroscience, as it's limited how much we know about our genes, our DNA, and what prompt or not certain conditions in our manifestation, in our physical genetics. So it's the idea that we can study this with an open mind. And I will always be very truthful to what is already more of a consensus, more people have experienced. It's something that we hear long and long, many years, and many people saying, and what is maybe a speculation. But there is a role for speculation, or better saying, a place for speculation in science. But here I would not like to attain to any detail that will be a speculation or a hypothesis. I'm going to try to be strict to the observation of what many people have described and some of the things that I have seen outside the body myself, so it's a first-hand experience. And I chose to discuss about this today, the movie Soul. There are many movies that we can analyze together. Soul has many different angles for us to study including the out-of-body experience, including places that we would go when we are in a better condition after death, including consciousnesses, you could say beings, spirits, anyways, people who are not with a physical body, but who would be much subtler and much more advanced in their capacity of understanding life, that they would have more of a fluid manifestation, subtler. So all of this is there for us to observe and to discuss. There are situations that are very similar to what we see outside the body. Some of the things not so much. This is normal with movies, right? Movie is not a class. A movie, it's an entertainment with a topic. And I love that nowadays we are having so many movies about this topic. I have already consulted or given consultancy to a couple of film producers and the director. And I think that is so important work, so that we help things to be closer to reality. Otherwise, most of the things that movies would show are scary, spooky, because it sells more. Do you agree with me on that? It sells more. It's just like people are, wow, there is butterfly in the stomachs and I want to know what is that. And there comes the emotion and people just sells better. So I try to do my part on that in clarifying. And here, in spite of so many different angles that we could study of the movie Soul, I chose to discuss about one of the things that to me I think was especially important in the movie. There were two ideas that I thought were important. One of the life mission, our purpose in life. But I think that was a little bit romanticized in the movie. There are still important points for us to discuss. But when we talk about this consciousness, these spirits who are in between lives and are confused, I thought that brought not a perfect explanation, but some interesting angles for us to examine, especially in relation to the out-of-body experience and the role that some astral projectors would have in helping consciousness who are in such a condition. By consciousness, I mean spirit, self. I just used to call it consciousness, but it's the same idea. And I think that there are many projectors who really apply themselves, not necessarily at will, but they are open to it, and they see themselves in conditions of helping others outside the body. When I have somebody that is with me like in a one-to-one session, and we are like in a private conversation, what I love the most is when somebody will come to me and talk, but they have not studied about out-of-body experience. They have not read many books. Some have read no books, and they just experience, until some of them saw my TEDx talk and wanted to exchange some ideas. And what amazes me, and it's wonderful in my point of view, is how I hear from them descriptions and situations that match perfectly what is more of a consensus, meaning what is a more down-to-earth standard of experience that most experienced veteran astral projectors would have. And the reason why I'm saying this is because right now I'm remembering of somebody from New York who came and spoke with me, and it was a gift to me, really. Because he was asking me things about his out-of-body experiences and asking me to explain what that would be, what he could have done better, and how he could interpret that. Because in terms of the out-of-body experience, it's not just a matter, hey, I fly, I pass through the wall, and then what? Oh, I see the silver cord, which, by the way, is not that easy to see or to sense, but of course it's possible. And then people think it's only that. However, one of the important roles of astral projection is to interact with people who are confused, who are not in a so nice condition when they are in between lives. One of the important things, that does not mean every projector will do it. That does not mean you, when you are applying a technique, when you are trying to leave the body, that's what you are going to see. Not at all. Why not? Because most of the time, we do more of an everyday thing outside the body, floating, flying, seeing our own body, perhaps seeing energy, seeing some environments and learning about the non-physical vision or the vision of the astral body. But this gentleman from New York was telling me of some of the assistances he did, which he did not know what it was, but he would meet certain people in certain conditions that they were not in a good condition. I'm not going to describe the details of his experiences, but that he would talk, that he would exchange energy, and then he would emanate peace. But he knew nothing about that, technically speaking. He just had an intuition of what he had to do. And he would feel so well, so balanced, so energized, and would see that person that was not well, was confused, was lacking energy, lacking vitality, and then he would just act out of instinct. And I love this idea, because we can act out of instinct outside the body. Sometimes it's better than following the wrong advice. Does it make sense to you? Some people, they have one experience and they start sharing how it is, how it works, and let me teach you. But hey guy, you had one or two or three. If you're going to teach, you have to examine many, so that you really understand what's going on there. So I loved his descriptions, and I wish I could record or tell him, hey, let's come and share with me my channel, because that is an example. That's not an explanation. That's not how it goes necessarily in every case or to everyone, but that's an example. And we need examples to illustrate things. And I'm going to tell you one of my experiences that I think illustrate well this type of topic that we are discussing today. But my point here is, so let me try here to bring to you some ideas in face of these descriptions that are very consistent. They have a lot of inner coherence in what is being said. It's not just something, just thrown out, that it's sometimes out of the blue. Some things I hear and I say, possible, but not necessarily in this way. So that is the idea here, for us to examine that. Oh, okay, there is a noise. Can you hold for a moment? It's my air conditioning. It's on high. I'm going to reduce the fan speed so I have less noise. Here we are seeing one of them, but that's not the one I want to show you. Not this one. This one. Can you see it well enough? I hope so. I hope so. I see that it's a darkish image, but that's what they tried to represent there. And what you see here in this image is an environment that they represented in a way that is foggy and all blue, but could be anything. Usually it's more grayish, not because gray represents anything bad, but just because gray is how we see it outside the body, because we are seeing something without much luminosity. So we see it like, when it's sunset and things start getting dark and you have that strange color in the environment that we do not see as clearly. So this is how we would see outside the body. And in this image here of the movie, we see lots of people just walking there, like zombies-like. But they are not just zombie-likes. They would attack someone who would get close to them and would react in ways that they don't understand. One of the interesting scenes of the movie, have you guys watched the movie? If not, I recommend that you watch it. One interesting thing that I see is that when people start studying especially many people who do, for example, the consciousness development program, because we link so many ideas and we make the whole panorama of physical life, non-physical life, passing, evolution, and all of that makes sense in a whole. So I see sometimes that people would watch a movie or would read a book and they say, oh, it's saying all of the things that we know. And then I read and say, it's not saying it here. You are inferring because you already know it. And it's amazing how us human beings and the way our mind works is such that we tend to look for meaning in things and we put our own meaning. So many times I have given a conference, for example, a lecture, and I see people interpreting things in their own way because they are comparing with something they knew before. And I suggest that you watch the movie and with an open mind, without there's a passage in the movie that the main characters, so the main characters is a piano teacher who wanted to become a professional piano player, and a consciousness, a being, a soul, that refused to be born, didn't like the idea of being born. So in that case, what happened in the movie is that when these two guys were in between dimensions, they left the spiritual dimension in conditions that were not what was supposed to be in the movie, but it's a funny anecdote there. But they didn't come to the physical dimension either, like being reborn. So they were just stuck in between. And in the movie, this in-between dimension, they would call it the zone. And the zone for them was the astral dimension, the astral plane. That is really not correct in the movie, because all of that is the astral plane. The dimension, or let me put it this way, the layer of the astral dimension, astral plane, I like to call it non-physical dimension, the layer in the non-physical dimension where there are more advanced consciousness, that is the same non-physical dimension, astral dimension, as the one that we go to when we are projected outside the body. However, the difference is that when we are projected outside the body, most of the time we stay very close to the physical dimension. So that we could say is more in between, because we still see the physical dimension. And that's the type of experience that most people have. But that's not the only possible type of experience outside the body. We can have out-of-body experience in which we go to places that are completely different than our physical world. And by being different, then what we see is that sometimes it's an environment that we cannot interpret well. This different happens in both cases. So much more advanced that looks like something from another planet. But sometimes we can go to a dimension that's so much less advanced that it looks ugly. But those are exceptions. Most of the time, we are in places similar to the ones we have experienced here in our everyday life. Now, these two guys, the piano teacher that was called Joe, and the soul, who they all appeared like in an image like child, as if they were all children, those who were going to be reborn. But this soul and Joe, they were caught in between in the astral plane, and they got close to one of those entities there. And I say one of those entities, like one of those disturbed consciousness, that they would feel like very confused. Some of them, they would explain, they would be confused like that because they could not let go of the image they had of themselves in the physical world. And some of them were so distressed and so unhappy, so frustrated, so not authentic, not spontaneous. This is one of the things that they emphasize, that they ended up being in a situation in which they got caught in between. They were not yet in the beyond, they were not yet free souls, but they were not alive either. Now, and here what we see in this image, for those of you who did not watch the movie, is that one of these souls that were all confused and heavy, which is the dark one over there, ended up meeting and somehow appearing in a dimension in which there were souls that were more advanced, more evolved. And the way they depicted those souls, I believe they did a good research in terms of out-of-body experience and people who have experience of seeing things outside the body. Because these more advanced souls, they show it in a way as if they can change form. And with those very thin lines to show how ethereal they are, how subtle they are. So this is a good comparison. Not that they look like that, and not that those who are disturbed would look like this chubby, dark figure. It's just a representation. But how can a movie show something if it's not through visual means? So it's a representation. But in this representation here, what happens is that in one of the moments that Joe and the little soul there, they used to call her 22. So Joe and 22 got close to one of these figures there, one of these beings, and they were attacked. They start being entrapped into the energy field, into the atmosphere surrounding around that. So that, I think, was an interesting representation of how sometimes we would see some spirits, some consciousnesses that would affect us in a way when we are projected. Could them affect also people who are in between lives? In some rare cases. And I'm not going to go into that because we would require lots of previous information for me to present that in a way that makes sense. But let's make it simple. When we are projected outside the body, we may end up caught into the energy or in the energy field of creatures who are not so balanced. That does not mean they necessarily have a bad intention. That does not mean they necessarily want to harm us. But yes, that could be very unpleasant. One thing that is not correct in the movie, let me make sure that is clear, is that in the movie, these two guys, who are the piano player and the other soul who didn't want to be born, they had to be saved by somebody. In reality, when we are projected, we don't have to be saved by anybody. We will wake up. We will return to the body. What would be interesting for us here to think about is what would be the consequence, what would be our state when we wake up. Because it could be that we ended up waking up feeling heavy, feeling confused, feeling anguished, feeling distressed, and maybe feeling scared. But we will wake up, we will come back. And the idea here is, how can we understand what is the energetic process that goes on there? In the movie, there is something that I like it, which is the fact that the projectors had to almost like throw a net. And I liked very much the analogy of throwing a net into those beings' consciousness who are confused. Because what is the idea of throwing a net? It's throwing one's own energy and somehow encapsulating, but in a good way, that consciousness who is all confused into that positive energy, the net, until they calm down, and they can understand their situation. And different processes goes on there. We have for example, in the consciousness development program, a whole module only to discuss about how we help people outside the body and what are the different situations. And is this something that happens often, that you do not expect? No, you have to be prepared. This is not going to happen when we are not prepared. But as I said in the beginning of this video, sometimes it happens spontaneously because you who are watching me may have more experience with the out-of-body experience than you are aware of it, because perhaps you don't remember all of them. Perhaps there are experiences that you have had in previous lifetimes. Right now you don't have them as much, but when you are outside the body, you do reveal that wisdom. So it's possible. So see in your case how it is, but do not jump to conclusion. Here we have to keep a lot of self-criticism. Do you understand what I mean by that? Self-criticism. Don't jump to conclusion. Don't dive into, wow, crazy ideas that now I am navigating and doing things. No. If you are really having out-of-body experience and doing it, you are grounded. And we have modesty. We are modest because the more out-of-body experience we have, the more we know how much we don't know. So there is no reason to be arrogant. So I find it that many times we can learn from the personality of people here who really has experiences that are more advanced. And one of the ways that the projector that appears there in the movie Soul, it's a hippie. They encounter the guy here in the physical world. That's a nice passage of the movie. And it's a hippie. I think that was a little bit of a caricature of people who were into the new age or whatever. So the guy's a hippie looking like figure who would sometimes, smoke pot, whatever. And then he would have astral projections. But in his astral projections, he had a team of other projectors who he would meet only outside the body. And they would work together in those assistants. That is not totally unheard of. It's not common, but it's not totally unheard of. People who work in groups and they know themselves outside the body. Sometimes, and I have already had experience like that, we meet people outside the body before we meet them here in the physical body. So that's interesting. But that is the idea. Now let me tell you one of my experiences in which I saw something very similar to that idea there of the movie Soul. I was in a projection. I was in a city that I was not familiar with. I was traveling, so I stopped by that city. I was teaching about out-of-body experience. It was in the northeast of Brazil. And I just arrived in the hotel. I was there. It was my first night there. And I had a projection in which I saw a type of environment that was completely different from everything I have ever seen in terms of pictures and images of that city. Because that is a touristic city, very famous for its beach, and everybody's like in the hot in the beach with summer clothes. So that is the atmosphere. But I saw something that was almost like hilly. So there were some hills and very green, like grass, lots of grass. So that was the appearance of the physical place, which means I was close-ish to the physical dimension, which we could use as an analogy that the zone area there that is in between in the movie Soul. And when I was there in that experience, there were two things that were quite interesting. One of them is that I would see some people who were in between lives, but they would look like children. Outside the body, there is no such a thing as children or an old person. There is, yes, an appearance of how the consciousness feels oneself, how the spirit is feeling within himself or herself looking like male or female is just appearance. We are not male or female when we are in the astral body, but we have a type of energy that may resonate more with our experiences as a female or as a male, and we will show in our image. Now we can see people looking quite distressed, not looking well, not good looking outside the body. And unless they are faking it, doing almost like a morphing of their image, they could do it just to scare you. But let's say it's not. That's how they look like. It's because that's how they are feeling inside. That explains why sometimes we meet a relative who passed away, who was looking 70s, in his 70s or 80s. When you meet that person, let's say it's our granddad, outside the body, you look at the granddad, you recognize perfectly. It's the same that you said goodbye to, very lucid. He's looking 40s, in his 40s, like the age in which, just as an example, he was mature and he felt like that, mature and glowing and beautiful. But not always. Sometimes we see people who are looking ugly. So I saw in that experience consciousnesses, these spirits who are looking like children. Maybe they died as children, maybe they were being prepared to be reborn, but I didn't have the idea. My idea was that they were in need of help. So they could not absorb energy by themselves. Why would somebody not be able to absorb good, healthy, light energy when they are in the non-physical world, in the astral dimension, the spirit world? Because it's everywhere. It's just a matter of what we connect with. But when someone does not connect with that, it's because they are limited in their inner feeling, in their vision of reality, in how they are feeling inside themselves. That's why sometimes people say, oh, you create your own reality. You don't create your own reality. That's not true. We live in a reality that is common. It's a collective reality in the spirit world. However, how you experience it, how you feel it, it's going to be different from person to person. So yes, we had those children and I was helping, almost like taking care of them, touching with caress and giving food. There's no food outside the body, but it's just a representation so that they would feel they were cared for, so they would improve their condition. And by the way, in that experience there, I met people who I knew here in the physical life that who are also projected there, one person only. But that's okay. And then we went to another phase of the experience, same place. I kind of moved a bit due to like an intuition, and I felt myself just moving, like floating, but very slowly, as if I would walk without moving my legs, if you understand what I mean. So I would move and navigate very slowly towards that. And then I arrived at the same area, the same hills, but just a little bit lower in that hilly area. And I saw like a stream of water. But that stream of water, to me, was like full of energy that was not so balanced. I do not know how to say, not so healthy. And I saw people I mean consciousnesses, who are in between life, people in between life. I saw immersed into that water, only showing from here up, so they were completely inside there, sucking, living out of the energy from that stream of water. And in that moment, I knew that was an open sewage. So I was amazed on how those consciousnesses, they didn't even notice my presence. So they were less lucid than the other consciousness who are appearing as children. They were less lucid, They did not react to my presence. I didn't interact with them at all. They were almost like self-encapsulated, which is something that they show in the movie Soul, when they show the lost souls there. They are encapsulated. You cannot interact. And even if you try to talk to them and take them out of the loop of their thinking, they continue caught into that thinking over and over and over. So you need a process, you need a technique to take them out of that self-hypnosis in a way that they are with their own thoughts, so that you can interact and you can do something to help. And these are the key techniques when somebody wants to be useful, to do assistance outside the body. Because to the projector who is doing the assistance, it costs zero. On the contrary, we learn a lot. On the contrary, we give a type of energy that is denser, which is what these guys need, and we end up getting subtler energies from the projection per se, so we come back to the body revitalized. Nobody, let me explain this in details, nobody who does nobody who does perform assistance outside the body would wake up feeling tired, feeling down, feeling depressed. No, this is not the case. It does not happen in this way. So what we see here is actually that when we are conscious, lucid, knowing what we are doing, we help others, we come back to the body, we feel absolute joy. That is what that guy from New York who spoke with me to tell me his experience and ask me questions about it, he reported spontaneously. I saw somebody who was in such and such condition, I did this and blah, 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 blah. I do not understand what it was, but this is how it happened. But then he tells me about when I woke up, I was radiant, feeling great, knowing I did something good, I could help, it was important. So that's how we feel. If you don't feel well, then we have to see what went wrong. Maybe there was not an assistance. Maybe you were caught into a situation that you interpreted in a way and it was not. Anyways, when we talk about out-of-body experience and all of that context, need to understand the whys. So I told you my experience in which I saw these guys there into the sewage. For a moment, my internet was gone. Are you there with me? Okay. So just going back to the point where I was. So when I saw those guys there, just absorbing energies from the sewage, I could understand how much they were in a situation that were just connected with themselves only. They wouldn't even interact with each other. It was like a community, a bunch of people there. We could not even distinguish completely their features. Were just really looking like the guys that we saw in the image of the movie Soul. And let me see if I have another image here that I could show you. Not really. I think this one is an image that shows us that. No, not really. Only the one at the right side of the image here is one of those that look like deformed, but this was more or less what I saw. Humanoid figure. And that's it. I could not help them because there was no way to connect energetically. But I could help the other ones who were a little bit more open. And I woke up absolutely normal, even better than normal. So trying to help you here understand part of the reason why this sort of thing happens. Can we help with love thoughts, all kinds of entities, human and non-human, and even most distressed ones without any anger? Is it more successful in group-like spirits from Kardec? There are a few different angles from your question there. So can we always help all of those? No. No, because some of them, to be able to help them, we need a long process. Sometimes there are some of these assistants that may take weeks or months, in which the non-physical mentors, like the spirit guides, but who are there working to help others and sometimes work with us in the astral projection. They create processes, they are phases, almost like in a therapy. You first have the person to understand there's a situation, and then you have the person be okay with that, and then you give the person energy, and then, so yes, we can help everyone, but not like this, not necessarily. However, Mohammed, when we meet someone outside the body in this condition, most of the time, not all of the times, but most of the time, we can do something to help them. Because the fact that we met them means there is some sort of connection of us with that consciousness, but also there is some sort of energy coupling. I don't mean only connection in terms of getting to know, rapport, but I mean energy coupling. So usually we can do something. Is it possible that groups like a Spiritist Center can do better? It depends on the type of case, because they can help with some people that are in a certain type of manifestation and in a such connection with the person that almost like what in the movie Soul, we see the projectors there doing, that they throw a net and have those consciousness there close to their energies until they start transforming the inner thoughts, the inner condition of those souls or spirits who are there disturbed. Same sort of throwing a net that we see in the astral projection is what happens in a Spiritist center, for example. So there is an energy field, it's not a net, there is an energy field of some type, and the non-physical consciousness we disturb gets trapped, but in a good way. So it's a therapeutic thing. Gets there hooked into those energies until a process is done to help them get better. It doesn't mean, they will become perfect and evolved. But it means it's an improvement, and they will go to whichever level possible. In the case of the Spiritist Center, most of the times, they don't go to much further level. What or who is helped the most are the physical people who are suffering from the presence of those spirits who are disturbed. So by removing the spirits from that specific connection with the person, or making that spirit get a little bit better, it helps the physical person. But this will always depend on the level of the type of consciousness who is there. In some cases in the Spiritist Center also, there are spirits that are helped, that they are completely unconscious, they are confused, their minds are a mess, they cannot even process their thoughts clearly. I mean, their thoughts over there in their spirit body, their astral body. They cannot process their thoughts, so what they say, it's all confused. So this is a situation that may happen, and then just by making them calmer, it's already a great therapy and a step ahead for them. Could I shed some light into this topic, Mohammed? Because there is no answer here that would be yes, it's possible, no, it's not possible. It's complex, so I tried to answer like in a nutshell a large concept. I hope it helped. Thank you. Can spirits come in any form? Can they take form from whom we know, like from people we know? Come, you mean come here in the physical world? Or you mean appear to us in an astral projection? We see them in an astral projection. When we see them in an astral projection, yes. Can they appear in any form? No, only in the form that they are able to hold their concentration and manifest that. So it's not any, but pretty much they will transform themselves into that, shape-shift in a way. But here in the physical world, no. Because then there is a complex situation of the paragenetics or the characteristics that the person already has before being born. I just call paragenetics as an analogy, and then how that interacts with the physical genetics, the real one, and many other factors. So no, we don't choose our form here, but out there, yes, we can change our form. That's why we have to be wise. Never ever follow the looks. You pay attention and you follow the feeling, the information that you get from the energy that is present there, not the looks. Does it make sense? Hope so. Ron, is our purpose or purposes something like an attachment created by past karma that we are better off letting go of rather than pursuing? No, Ron. The two things exist, but then it's not exactly a purpose, right? This is a continuation, Carol? Can this be meditation matters? So let me answer the other one first, right? Ok, Carol, você pode tirar essa. This one, yes. So I'm going to answer this. It has more relation to what we are discussing here. So the idea is that our purpose here in life, it's not random. It's not something that we choose because we like. No, it's something that is inside of us. And it has to do with what we have to learn, what we can do for others, what a difference we can make, but not for others only, for ourselves too. And what is it that we can accomplish? So it's a mix of many different things. And it depends, Ron, that's very important, on the level of lucidity that we had before being born, so that we created a plan of our purpose. But it also depends on what sort of past events we have had. So that is our life purpose. However, now comes the big however. When we are here inside this body, sometimes we get confused with what we feel, what we like, what we dislike. We get confused with what is the real us and what came since the beginning, since we were born, inside of us. In other words, what is innate to us, and what is it that we learned, that we acquired, that our education and our upbringing influenced us with, and therefore we got different skills, but not only skills, we got different desires, different dreams, different expectations that were not necessarily ours when we planned to come to this life and when we were born. So the first thing, we have to separate both. And there is a third thing here that I'm going to add, which is our tendencies, things that we did in other lives that we got used to, we like doing. So just to pick any example, okay? So let's suppose somebody comes to this lifetime with a goal of being a doctor, participate in Doctor Without Frontiers in an area of the world in which that person had a lot of influence in previous lives, and therefore now that is how that person is going to contribute. I'm not saying somebody comes with a mission like this out of the blue. There's a large context that I do not have time to explain here, because we need to understand how things work to be able to get to the point of, I understand the mechanism. I see why yes, why no, what is not logical, what makes sense. But let me answer your question in the best way I can here. So just out of the example, let's say that person has a mission to do that. However, the person has been sailing for many lives before, for different reasons. Maybe as a profession, maybe as a sport, maybe he was an aristocrat and would do that as a sport, and here in this life, the person loves it. Therefore, the person wants to be a professional sailor, competing. And the person is good at that. And the person loves it. Is that the purpose, the life purpose of that individual? Not necessarily. It may just be something that would be nice to pursue as a hobby, but not necessarily as the most important thing in life, because sometimes that is not how we are going to be able to learn the most, how we are going to be able to develop the most, and how we are going to be able to change the reality around of us in terms of people we are connected with, not only family, I mean in a broader scale, and the world, the communities we are in contact with, in the best way possible. So inside of us, we have to know the difference. And it doesn't mean we have to suffocate what we like to do, but it means that we have to be truthful and say, I feel inside of myself there's something else I have to do. And in spite of me trying to achieve so much, and in spite of me having already achieved so much, I still feel something is missing. So if I still feel something is missing, well, then perhaps it would be good for me to try and stop for a moment and think what that is. So only you can know it, right, Ron? Only you can know it. I hope I could explain that in a way that would make sense. Is that okay, guys? Yes? Can I get another one? Can this be why meditation matters of the East encourage waking up instead of following one's dream? No, in the Eastern tradition, when they talk about waking up, usually, at least in my interpretation, what I see that they are saying is, see the world for what it is. Take out the veil of illusion. Take out, any veil that would not let you see what it is. So wake up. Wake up to the fact that we have many lives. So some of the breathings that I have done. Wake up outside the body. Wake up to what you have to do. So I see more of that, talking about being more aware. And but I also see behind that many times, follow your dreams. Follow your dreams. Do not follow what you superficially like doing, because all of us, we have the things that we like more or less, that we find it easier or harder. Follow dreams. I don't like the word dreams because of that. Because dream will mean something different to each person. And for somebody, dream means, oh, I can wish anything and that has to happen because that's my dream. So what? I can become someone who I am not? I can all of a sudden acquire skills that I never had in any of my lifetimes? No, I have to develop them first. So it's not any dream. However, many people refer to that feeling inside that there's something that they have to do, that they would like to do, that they would like to accomplish. They call that a dream. So that is valid in this sense. So you see here we are interpreting the words dream and wake up. And that's my interpretation. Hope it helps. Peter, in the movie, so we are referring to the movie Soul, to those of you who are here with us just starting now. The whole process of being reborn seemed to be extremely well organized. Is this the case? Are there queues of souls waiting to be reborn? Can we guess how long does it typically take? Oh, very smart questions. So, in some cases, it is that organized. Of course, not in the way the movie showed, because it's a movie. There's lots of analogies, metaphors, symbolic information there. But yes, there are certain processes for certain consciousness, some of us, in which it is that organized. Even organizing what would be the life purpose of the person. It's that organized. So yes, but not for everybody. So it cannot be generalized. There are many different possibilities. If it were for everybody, it would be quite strange, right? That here in our world we have so many people that are so, well, unbalanced, full of hatred, sometimes enjoy being evil and doing strange things. So it would be funny to think that that was planned and organized. But in some cases, yes. Other cases, it's just out of energy coupling, compulsion. The person is so much connected with one area, one topic, one person, or one group. And just by being so close energetically, the person ends up coming into that context. So there are many different factors that influence here. One's karma, and I don't like much the word karma because it sounds like something you did bad, you come to repair. That's not correct. So we at the International Academy of Consciousness, we prefer calling it in reverberance from our evolutionary reverberance, who we are, reverberates in the energies, and then you get a wave of energy back. So that is the idea, almost like a resonance. So in this case, this is one of the factors that would contribute there in terms of our karma and what we would experience. Can you bring the question back to me, Carol? Just for me to be sure that I answer all the aspects. So is this the case always? No. And the other aspect here in your question, thank you, Carol, is how long it typically takes to be reborn. That's another thing that varies a lot. And it's hard to answer with absolute precision because when we are outside the body, we will meet consciousnesses, right? Like a relative who passed away, someone who is preparing to be reborn. I have already had experiences like that, but how do we keep track of that? It seems, based on some studies or some observations, that most people would be around one generation, 30 years perhaps, 40, but this is so much of an educated guess in an average condition that I don't think it's very fair that we state that as if it is like that, because there are some cases in which the person is reborn pretty close to the date in which they passed away for a specific reason, and there are some cases that have been recognized like that. Some case does not mean it happens a lot, but also there are cases of consciousnesses who remain long time in between lives because they have less to do here, or because they are so caught into their own thoughts, being distressed, being confused, being sometimes completely apart from reality, or refusing to connect with anything to be reborn, that they may stay a long time there for a productive reason, meaning they are evolved enough for that, but other times meaning they are so confused, they are so unbalanced that they don't even get to be reborn often enough. So there is no way for me to answer that without giving a huge explanation on all of these aspects. But I did not want not to address your question, so that's why I made these comments. Is that good? Yes? Thank you. And firstly, thank you so much for this talk. It's a pleasure for me. What do we mean by the term lost to describe a soul? How can a soul get lost? Do people with lost soul live on the earth? I like your question, and the only reason why I described as lost soul is because that's the expression that is used in the movie. And because here we started our discussion and our study based on what we could see in the movie Soul, so I used lost souls. I don't usually use that expression. But the word lost means lost in their thoughts. When we use like a lost spirit, somebody who is completely lost outside the body, or in between lives, I don't mean projected, I mean in between lives. That expression can be used, and what it means is that the person is lost in their own thoughts, is lost in figuring out what is the environment they are in, what is their next step, understanding the situation. So it's more like when you are in a conference and you hear all the talk and say, I don't get a clue what these guys are saying, so I'm lost. So that is the idea, right? So it's more lost in terms of the awareness. Nobody's really lost in terms like a position in space. I am in a dimension, I do not know how to get out of here. No. Because outside the body, it's mainly our lucidity, our thoughts, our inner state, what will guide us to reach specific communities or layers in the non-physical dimension, and therefore there is no lost. We may be in a place that is not that great to us, or that we could be better, but in that moment we are not lost. We are in a place that exactly fits the information that comes out of us in our energy. Okay? Thank you, Andy. Sigur. Many believe that the light erases everything and forces us back into reincarnation, and that we should not go in there. What is your opinion on this? I don't think we can avoid completely reincarnating, not according to my experience and my studies, because we all have cycles and we all have lots to learn. We may resist, as they show there in the movie, the little soul resisting. Yeah, some people do resist. But eventually, we end up being, again, caught into that loop. There are some situations in the non-physical world in which there are consciousness who they got so much lost into their own thoughts, disconnected from reality, that it's hard for them to reconnect and be reborn. And there are some specific types of assistance, some specific procedures, actions, therapeutic actions that some non-physical mentors use in order to help those consciousness to become closer to reality. So what I've seen is that it's hard to escape from it, because we have connections, we have energy connections, and in the moment that we have an energy connection with a certain reality and environment and situation, we will end up coming back eventually. So I'm not sure if I 100% understood your question, but those are comments that I hope can help. Helena, nice to see you. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct. Jelena, perhaps? One day you tell me. And the question is, how does cultural conditioning here on Earth affect our astral body? Very smart question. Affects a lot. Many people, when they are projected, for example, they do not go out on the cosmos, in the universe, getting out of the planet because of conditioning, because we are stuck here. Many people have difficulty flying. Many people will behave outside the body in the same way they behave here. You know, I'm going to give you one example, simple, but that's going to illustrate perfectly. Somebody is projected and lucid, therefore knowing he or she is projected, knowing that's a non-physical environment, seeing the environment and being able to interpret, however, is seeing only in this direction, which is exactly the range of vision that we have here in the physical body. Now, but when we are projected, our eyes is not what makes us see. What makes us see outside the body is our lucidity. The more lucid, the more aware, the more balanced, the more connected with the experience we are, the more we can see. So we can see 360 degrees. But how many times people were projected outside the body and they saw in 360 degrees? If you had experience, how many times have you, for example? Helena. So it's not easy because of conditioning. Many people, when they see further, they would see, for example, 180 degrees, like in this direction. Why? Because we are more used to doing this, right? And looking around. Another conditioning. Most people, when they leave the body, they start floating. Because the astral body gets light and floats. No, we are not a balloon. No, we are not a balloon. It's just conditioning. Because we can slide, we can sink in, we can leave the body in many different ways. The easiest, most common, and that usually happens spontaneously, is floating, sitting up, standing, because of conditioning. So there are so many ways in which the conditioning of the life here on Earth affects our astral body and our astral projection. The main question here, I guess, just going beyond what you asked, would be, is it possible that this conditioning is going to affect me or affect people in general after they pass through the physical death, the biological death? Therefore, they are alive. They are not with the physical body. They are in their non-physical body, in the astral body. And they are behaving there with limitations that only the physical body had those limitations. And the answer is yes, many, most people. And what about me and you? It would be an interesting reflection. How much would we see reality beyond just the conditioning of the manifestation here in this physical dimension? That is an interesting thing for us to study. The more we can understand the mechanism of the out-of-body experience and what happens out there, and the more we can have experiences and understand our sensations, our feelings towards that, the more we can answer this question. Does not mean we are going to know 100% of the details and be able to answer everything, but we will have at least some clue. We will have at least some idea of what is it that we can work on and improve while we are here. But that is also why sometimes we see consciousnesses who are distressed, who are confused in between lives. That is the main reason. And let me add another thing here, just briefly, and that is also something that requires some more discussion, but I want to bring this just to associate ideas. Imagine, it's possible that some individuals, when they are here, inside this body, which is heavy dimensionally speaking, which we need to think through lots of synaptic connections, engrams, and we need to deal with this gray mess here for us to be conscious of some ideas, which therefore is not the easiest for us to be very lucid, very bright. However, some people, they are much more lucid here than they were ever in their previous periods between lives. Someone like this will not have a lucid out-of-body experience. Why? Because they can only manifest lucidity and awareness here in the physical body. And there are many people who are like that. It's not you who are watching me, because if you endured this video until now, you can digest the idea that life exists beyond this world. And it makes sense to you, no matter how much of experience you have already had in this lifetime. Just the fact of this making sense to you in a way that is not just a religious thought, but it's like an objective reality that we are examining, just that means you got to have had experiences in which you were lucid in between lives. And little by little, our lucidity here and our openness here increases, and we start having a little bit more of perhaps astral projections, even if we don't remember them. I'm kind of guessing how this evolves, but it gets to a point that we start getting more and more lucid of what is out there. That was a nice question that made us here bring some interesting thoughts. Can I get one or two more questions? Can you guys hang in there with me a little more? Yes? Mateus. Hi, Mateus. Thanks for being here with us. Question. Does spirits approach us by affinity? Affinity by thoughts, feelings, or emotions? Yes, they approach us by affinity of all of these. Thoughts, emotions, quality of energy, but it's not correct saying that all of them only approach us, only gets close to us, and only connects with us by affinity. That is not correct. Most of them, yes. Those that we have as a non-physical companion, like a spiritual presence, yes. Those that would affect us more deeply, yes. However, imagine a situation, Mateus, that we would go to an excursion in an area that is very beautiful. It's in the woods. However, when we are going there, there had been a war there in which a certain civilization just did a massacre and got the land from the other one. And we are there. We have nothing to do with that. We are just doing tourism. At least in my example, we have nothing to do with that. We could have, but in my example, no, we don't. We are just doing tourism. And then, because of our openness with energy, because of our sensitivity, or perhaps because we sit by a tree and we start exchanging too much energy with that tree, and there was a specific entity, consciousness, there using the energy of that tree to be closer here to the physical dimension, still attached to the situation that happened back there, that consciousness may get close to you. Doesn't mean it's going to follow you, but in that moment it gets close to you. You may start having some side effects, some results from being in contact with the energy, the quality of thoughts and emotions and past lives and awareness and values and ethics of that consciousness in you. So perhaps not good, perhaps good, usually not good. Because if it were good, the person would not be, as in my example, attached to that tree because I am from here. We are not from a specific area in this earth. We are from the universe. But we have connections, yes, places that we are more connected with, we love more, we feel better in. And places that for us, we don't care or we even feel bad when we are there because of energetic connections. So the answer to you is yes, based on all of these you mentioned, thoughts, emotions, quality of energy and all of that, but sometimes there could be other factors. And that was only one example of one possibility. Okay, Mateo? Thank you. One more, Carol, and then we stop. Arte, nice seeing you here. Is it possible that a living incarnated person has a ghost of their previous lifetime simultaneously? Thank you. Never seen that. When I think of the different experiences I have had and accounts I have read and different studies, I don't think that would make sense. I cannot say, no, it's impossible, because we are talking about science. But I can say, I've never seen evidence. I would not assume that hypothesis as one possible explanation. I would not go towards that line, and I would be inclined of saying, I don't think so. However, there are things here that I would like to bring to you, just to add to this topic. That is, sometimes we may have a certain presence close to us that was very, very close to us, very connected to us in a previous lifetime. And only the presence of that spirit, because now we are talking about someone who is in between lives, and we are not, so we are incarnated, and it would be someone not incarnated, just that presence could bring to us lots of sensations, lots of memories, lots of reactions, can even influence us, and sometimes makes it harder for us to change a few things inside of ourselves. So it's very important to be very conscious of that, to have that in mind as much as possible. So there are different things that we could use here as other explanations. I would say what you described is not anything that I've seen any evidence. Okay? Oh, it was so nice being here with you. For me, it's really a pleasure exchanging ideas with you, and we'll keep doing it. If you are here with me and you enjoy the talk, please remember to give me a thumbs up here in the YouTube. That helps me a lot, so that YouTube will recognize who likes this type of topic. And thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you.